Hello, this is Jonathan Wood from Soft Circuits. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate using the Cform view class. As you probably know, standard MFC applications use a view for interacting with the user. And unless you're using a specialized view, you must write code in order to display meaningful information in that view. On the other hand, if you choose to create a dialog box application, you can create your interface using a drag and drop designer. You place the controls onto the dialog box and they're displayed when your program runs. It's a bit of a trade-off. The view gives you more flexibility and the ability to organize your application using the document view architecture, yet requires more code. While the dialog box application does not require much programming, but limits flexibility and does not support the document view architecture. The Cform view class is a kind of mix between the two. It uses a dialog template to create the interface, but the main window is still resizable and you can still use the document view architecture. Although I should point out the Cform view is somewhat limited in its ability to work within the document view architecture because the dialog box controls store their own values, and it can be a lot of work trying to keep those values synchronized with the document. So let's go ahead and create a project. And I'm going to call it Form View. And I'm going to create a standard MFC application. I should point out that I do have the Visual C++ 2008 feature pack installed. And so my application wizard is going to look a little different, and my application is going to look a little different, and I'm not sure if you'll have problems running the application or not if you don't have that feature pack installed. As I mentioned, there's a little difficulty with the Cform view and keeping the data in the controls synchronized with the document, and we're going to come up with some ways to deal with that. But for sure, we want to create this, make this a single document user interface, having multiple documents and the potential for multiple views or multiple dialog boxes associated with each file would be more than we want to deal with. So we'll just have allow one application at a time, and we'll come up with a file extension of FVW for form view, or rather FVD for form view data. And then for our base class for our view, we will select the form view and click finish. And here it's warning me that printing support will not be available for form view. I guess I had printing support checked, so that won't be available, but that's fine. Okay, now let's just go ahead and take a quick look at what the wizards have produced for us. So I'll run that. Okay, and there's our application. Right now it doesn't really display anything, but we can see it as a gray area, and we actually have some text displayed, and this is a dialog box surface. So let's go ahead and take a look at the dialog box template. We'll go to our resource view and dialog box and our form view form. First thing you might notice is that the dialog box has no border and no caption, and that's required in order to fit within the form view frame. So I'm going to delete the text put there by the wizards, and we're going to keep things very simple just to demonstrate, but we'll go ahead and put a couple of controls on here. So we'll call it this one string 1, and we'll have an edit control, and we'll go ahead and do a string 2, and put another edit control. And then for the IDs on our edit controls, we'll call that one string 1, and this one string 2. Again, I'm going to keep it very simple. The data won't be that useful in this application, but you could certainly expand it to make it more useful. So let's go ahead and run that then. Okay, so again we have our form. It is resizable, and we now have our controls. We can type into them, and obviously you could produce a rather complicated set of controls. You should also point out that Cform view derives from Cscroll view, and in fact if I size the window too small to display all the dialog box, then we get scroll bars and we can scroll the area of the dialog box. So you could really go to town adding a bunch of controls and stuff. And I should point out we still have the menus, and if you have ever implemented a dialog box application, you can add menus to them, but they're not there by default, and you don't have all the additional MFC hookups into those. You need to kind of do a few more things by hand. So, but what we would like to implement is the save and open, so that we can pretend this is real data and we want to be able to save it to disk and read it back. So we have to do a couple things to make that happen. The first thing I'll do is go to our document class. I guess I want the header file. And we'll add a couple of members to it. And we'll just two strings, m underscore string 1 and m underscore string 2, and those of course will correspond to the two edit controls onto the our dialog box template. The next thing we want to do is to be able to save those to disk. So we'll implement some of the serialize commands. One of them is on new document, and so on a single document interface we do need to clear our data, so we can just simply say we can empty each of those strings, and then below that we have our serialize routines, and if we're storing it we simply serialize it, and if we're loading it we go the other way. Okay, now I can run that if I didn't have an error. And of course I can type data into here and I can save the file, but there's no connection between the text I've entered here in the dialog box and those strings in the document. And that is one of the more problematic issues of using Cform view if you also need the document view architecture, and the reason why I've only made this a single document interface. Now you might have it's easy to imagine a Cform view with a dialog box that doesn't have edit controls. Instead it displays some sort of information with buttons to change it, and in that case that wouldn't be an issue. But because edit controls store the strings, we now have to come up with a way to keep the value stored in those controls synchronized with those strings in our document. And so let's go and look at that then. Now if we look at our dialog template, we can go select our one of the controls. Actually, I don't want that. I want to add an event handler, and one of them is change. And this handler is going to be called anytime that the value is changes in the edit control, and we're going to handle that in our view. And while we're thinking about it, let's do the same for the second edit control. So we can you know, one way to make this a little easier too is I'll go ahead and add a variable for each of these. Each of these edit controls. And that'll make it a little easier to access the text that's in it, although not completely necessary. And this way our form can simply reference those. And actually, I forgot our view automatically has a get document method, so we can do like that, and then we'll pass the string 1, and we'll do the same for the string 2. So what we're doing here is each time we save the or each time rather we change one of those edit controls, either by typing in them or deleting or cut and paste, these events will be called. They will update the string in the document, and that way we're going to keep those two synchronized. So now if I run that, there's one other thing I want to do as well. I want to be able to tell the document that it's changed. So we call set modified flag, and this flag is what determines when you attempt to close the application, and it reminds you that the document has changed. And oops. And make sure you don't lose the data that you've entered. So we'll type in a value here. And if I just close the application, it tells me it's changed, or it asks me if I want to save it. I can say yes. And we'll call it file 1. And click save. Okay, so we've saved that data to disk, and now we'll want to make sure that we can read it back. The problem is we're now not synchronizing the other way. In other words, when the document changes, we need to update the values in our dialog box or our form view. So the way we can do that is if we go to our form view, we can override the onUpdate method, and that's called when the document changes. So here we can say we'll first get access to the document, and then we will copy the strings to the edit controls. And we'll do that to both of them. And let's see if I got that right then. So we'll run it. Thanks to MFC's most recently used file list, the file we just saved is automatically in the file menu. So we can just select it there. It's asking if I want to change. That's something that we need to change. And anyway, our strings come up, and that's what we want. So one thing, when we set the text in our edit controls, that causes the onChange event to occur. So just the fact that we set the strings means that it's is going to set our modified flag. So let's go ahead and clear that. We can call set modified flag with false, and that should resolve that issue. So we load the file, and if we haven't changed anything, we just simply exit. And if we do edit it or change it and we attempt to close, it tells us that well, rather it asks us if it wants to save our changes. So I know I spent most of that video talking about dealing with the document view architecture, and as I mentioned before, it's easy to imagine a design in the application where that's not really an issue, but that is one of the things you may need to deal with, and certainly the Cform view is yet another option you have when creating your MFC applications.